Hey guys, I know this is the first video in a while, so I am going to be talking about something relatively trending. So I'm going to talk about the new Custodes release, but from a Horus Heresy player's perspective. So I've got a couple of thoughts that I wanted to get out there on it in general for the Horus Heresy perspective, because I know this is a 40k release, but I predict it will impact the game I like playing. And when that happens, it's always interesting just to have a look at this and the way that they'll interact. So I have a couple of concerns and a couple of positives, I guess. One of the positives is that there's now a variety in the Custodes range, so you won't see the same allied attachments over and over again. And converting plastic miniatures is somewhat easier, so you'll get probably some cool conversions. However, that is the limit of all the positives, I have to say, and I know that means that the rest of the video might be a bit whingy and a bit I've got a cold anyway, so I sound like a miserable bastard, but I'm just be wary. It's from here on in it doesn't get as positive. So my first biggest issue with it is from a Horus Heresy perspective, besides the rulebook, all we've seen for the last 6, 7, 8 months since Book 7, basically, a smattering of Thousand Suns and Space Wars bits, although Space Wars only recently, is Custodes, and now we're seeing more Custodes. And so obviously I know, like I said, it's a 40k release, but they're a playable 30k army, so it will end up in our scene. So I have a right, but I think I'm looking at it from the right perspective when I say that it will impact the Heresy scene. So we've seen 6-7 months of constant Custodes releases, and just when we thought we had seen enough, they drop out like a couple of weapons for Contemptors and stuff like that, and now we're getting a whole nother Custodes release of models, characters, new bikes, new Terminators, and it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think I'm kind of tired of seeing it now. It's wearing a little bit thin. And it's actually making me start to go off the Custodes aesthetic. So I was, at the very beginning, I was into it. Right now, pretty sick of seeing the gold banana men, but there we go. So yeah, I mean, that's my initial thought is that's one of the concerns. It's been so many releases now. My slightly more gaming based concern, rather than hobby, because that's obviously hobby based, I like to see variety. They say variety is the spice of life, and when you've only had Custodes for 6-7 months and then bam, more Custodes, there's a lack of variety. However, for the gaming side of things, I'm somewhat concerned. Obviously I don't really play competitively, but people who want a competitive edge will still play narrative events, and so it does impact the games I'm likely to play. I foresee a lot more Custodes at higher points games now. With the introduction of the jet bikes, they'll be used, I think, quite a lot in the Horus Heresy, with some minor conversion work perhaps. One, they don't look like enormous penises, and two, they're probably going to be significantly cheaper. And again, it opens up, so they're quite a good unit in the game from my experiences, and it opens up another avenue at which those who play to, I say not play to win, but are more win at all costs, so those whack players, they will end up picking up these bikes because they're cheaper, and then they'll use them in the Heresy to win. And I think we'll see the same with the Terminators. I see a lot of I see people going and buying the 40k Terminators and running them as the Aquilon ones, and then there's a smattering of characters and a couple of extra bits and bobs, and I can just see all of a sudden all of these things making Custodes more accessible when they already have quite a big following anyway, from what my experience is in the meta anyway. And I would have said the last thing they needed was a cheaper way to be played. So for those of you who are totally unaware about Custodes in the Heresy, they are vastly undercosted. An example of people trying to rectify this is I'm going to the Geno 5.2 Tarsis event in February, and they have a 20% points hit. I still think they'll be potent, even with a 20% points hit. They'll be much more in line, but they'll still be potent. Their shields are dumb, their dreadnoughts are dumb. Like some of the stuff in that list, their 3-up reroll of a Limbo save bloke who can take out Primarchs. I'm just not keen on that kind of stuff. And Harry and I were talking about it actually, and it's kind of like, you know, when you ask an adult to design a car, they'll make it functional, but when you ask a child to design a car, they'll stick on rockets and guns, and they'll make it fly, and they'll make it a boat, and they'll make it have legs, and they'll make it turn into a 70-foot tall transformer. And I kind of feel like that's how the Custodes rules were written. And having a greater accessibility to those rules may encourage more whack gamers to pick them up and play them regularly in the Heresy. The issue that I have with that kind of mentality is it shifts the meta across every game. So you'll have those who play hardcore win at all costs, but if both sides are playing win at all costs, that's fine, because you know what you are getting when you go into the game. But it's when it affects those who don't want the same thing from the game that there becomes an issue, because you both want a different game. And if it can sort of, this power creep and power level can sometimes trickle down, and you'll get people who want to play a narrative event or want to go to an event and it's a narrative one, and they're like, well, I'll just take my regular list, and that regular list ends up being, you know, a really hard-hitting, dick-smashing list. You'll go up against some people who will play a totally different style of game, and when they go to a narrative event, that's what they're after, and they get caught in the crossfires almost of maybe some big guns, so to speak. And I fear that the new plastic release will get more people into it, and B, get those who buy models for rules interested in playing Heresy. So I think, and I could be wrong, but I think most players of the Horus Heresy game, they buy a model for the model, not the rules, and if it's got good rules, then bonus. But some of those models can be more expensive, so it automatically puts a stop to some people just going in, buying the best army rules wise and playing the game, because if the best army rules wise is a lot of money, it is going to deter people. So the Custodes jet bikes are not cheap. The 4-drop ones are pretty expensive, but now with the new plastic ones, they will be cheaper, and if they are significantly cheaper, I think we'll see a lot more Custodes jet bikes. Obviously they'll be the Games Workshop plastic ones, but they're still Custodes jet bikes, and I'd have a hard time telling someone that they weren't a custodian jet bike. Same goes for the Aquilon Terminators, so they're really good, and their hairdryer guns are apparently quite good as well. However, there are now very similar looking ones, well, similar in build, should we say. They might not be aesthetically the same, but if they represent the same thing, I think people will be pushing them into the Heresy without any obstruction. And not that there should be an obstruction, I'm just saying that's one of my concerns. We'll just see a lot more of the plastic stuff, a lot less of the nice resin stuff, and there's that now potential, because these are more affordable kits, that people who buy to win will be able to buy to win a lot easier. Obviously the Heresy community won't stand for unpainted stuff, so even if you are buy to win, you still have to paint your stuff. I think that's kind of a given, and I am so grateful for that, because I know that stops a lot of people going out and buying all the stuff and then just being an arsehole. So good job, community, well done, you guys are ruled. But yeah, so I just wanted to voice my concerns in that respect. Obviously the variety of the custodian models, great, that's fantastic. So we won't see the same custodian character representing 3 or 4 different builds, for example, and that's going to be really nice. But like I said, kind of sick of Custodes releases, and a bit concerned that it's going to impact my game. I say my game, you know what I mean, like the games I play. And Custodes are a tricky one, to be fair. I think they need a little slither book of their own, which just bumps up all their points costs and makes them more in line with everything else in the Heresy. But there we go. That's a complaining rant session for another time. I hope you found this vaguely informational. like I said, I apologise for the shitty camera and audio, and shitty cold, and shitty presenter. I mean, there are some things I can't fix, but I'm away from university where all my nice things are, and I can't afford someone to do this for me, so you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. But thanks ever so much for watching. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave those comments below. Let me know what you think of how it will impact your games. Obviously they're getting a 40k codex, which will probably be out of whack and super good, so I'm sure you'll see loads of Custodes on the table anyway. But specifically in the Horus Heresy scene, I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are, if they line up, and if you've got any counter points, I'd be happy to hear them. So thanks ever so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.